King K is wrong about Pokemon Sword and Shield. And in this video right now, what we're going to do is debunk the straw man nonsense and painful condescension in that video. We will then identify the actually surprising similarities between the Pokemon Company and King K Incorporated itself. And finally, I will be delivering King K his sentencing, which will specify what needs to be done in order for him to atone for this situation. So this video caused quite a stir among King K's subscriber. There was a fair amount of baffled backlash. A lot of the issues with the video pertains to the particular aspect of the Pokédex, because Generation 8 Pokemon Sword and Shield was the first Pokemon generation where they had to cut some Pokemon from previous generations. Up until then, all previous Pokemon were brought into the next generation, but because Sword and Shield Gen 8 was the first Pokemon generation on the Switch, the reason cited in the infamous Nintendo Treehouse on the game was that with the Switch's newly powered capabilities, now the Pokemon in the game can be more expressive, and because that involves higher development costs and time requirements, they had to make the decision to cut a certain quantity of previous gen's Pokemon, which they had never had to do before. But hey, it's the Switch, it's next gen, it's $60 game. I suppose people were amenable enough to that eventual inevitable concession that would need to be made. However, people were very displeased to discover that many of the Pokemon that were retained from previous generations just had the same wireframes recycled from the 3DS, bro. Right? You're paying $60 for a Switch caliber game. You don't want to see imported recycled wireframes from that handheld machine you played before. And so the fact of the matter is that these wireframes used all the same motions and mechanics. And so people looked at this and they're like, well, hold on. I don't see how this is supposed to be more expressive. If anything, there's new textures on the Pokemons. So are their fur, hair supposed to be expressive somehow? Are we being sold a pitch that's not grounded in anything substantive? Gamers were understandably wanting to see, the next level up of complexity, nuance, and expressiveness in the animations. And it just wasn't there at all. So one of the very bizarre things that King K pointed out in his attempt to debunk and push back on these criticisms of Pokemon Sword and Shield is that in the live stream where they made that statement about the expressive Pokemon, they were showing footage of the game during that very live stream. So King K says, well, it's not like they hid anything from you. They were showing you the gameplay footage while they were talking about it. And it's like, well, hold on. The footage that they show in a treehouse is not necessarily indicative of anything for the final product of the game, because it's a treehouse when it's still in development. It's not necessarily final game footage. It's got the disclaimer at the bottom of the screen, not final footage. Okay, but even if we were looking at it on the understanding that yes, these wireframes that you see in action here, recycled from the 3DS, are what's going to be in the game, well, it doesn't matter that they were showing it during the stream and that makes it transparent and honest. The point is, you could point to that and say, hey, he just said it was going to be more expressive, but we're just seeing the same recyclage. So the fact that King K would use this opportunity to very aggressively start piling on the condescension and say, anyone who has functioning eyeballs could see on screen, right? No one disputes that. No one disputes that we could see gameplay footage on screen, whether it was included in the stream or not. The point is just that they made concessions for the Pokédex. They provided a justification for that choice and then didn't deliver on an important aspect of that choice. And it does not matter whether people made this realization during the Treehouse stream or in the days and weeks afterwards. Another point that King K tried to use to defend the Pokemon Company's approach to this is to say that that quote that they gave about the expressive Pokemon may have been some kind of a translation error. It wasn't a prepared written statement, it was speaking off the cuff during a Nintendo Treehouse, and perhaps the translator picked the word expressive, but maybe that's not quite what was intended. And so King K uses this to say, well, on the basis of the ambiguity in the translation, it's not right to say that Game Freak lied, per se. So I flatly reject this defense of giving them a little bit of benefit of the doubt because of a potential translation issue, because that would set a bad precedent that anyone doing international business can just operate with one less layer of transparency and accountability, because you can just up and point at any one quote and say, maybe that's not exactly what they meant. If you're an international company, it falls upon you to pick a decent translator. And listen, bad translation, it's not like they're breaking any marketplace rules, but it is perfectly sensible for fans to feel like they're being fed this false narrative that's not backed up by anything substantive, and feel that this is just a salesman inflating the value of a product that's actually lower than what it would seem, and it's enough for them to lose trust and faith in the developers and potentially stop being a player or customer. So the ability to obfuscate specifics behind a translation benefit of the doubt layer is not a crime, but me as a customer, I want to be spoken to honestly, and I'm going to vote with my wallet if I see that some of these statements are non-substantive. Now, the next troubling thing that KingK tries to establish is that the Pokemon Company and Game Freak, he's saying, oh, they're not lazy because let me point at individual things that they did that are not lazy. He cites quotes that they selected Pokemon based on the widest appeal, and also acknowledging that the criteria of which Pokemon would make the cut needed to have synergy with the battle system for this game. And it just kind of feels like a cop-out. Like, sure, you can point at individual decisions they made or criteria they established as indication that they weren't just totally phoning it in, but that's a straw man. No one's saying they totally phoned it in. The game is functional, it counts as a Pokemon game in generation, it's just weak sauce, and a lot of the gamers are fed up with having their patronage taken for granted. And KingK further tries to chase people away from these criticisms by delivering one of my favorite cop-outs to call out is that KingK points at the audience and says, hey, you've never developed a game, so you don't know what you're talking about. So KingK, is that to say that everyone ever who has never developed a game now doesn't get a seat at the table of constructive criticism? Doesn't have the basis to say any amount of constructive criticism? What about potential players and customers voicing their very basic and fair concerns about the game as a criteria to decide if the game is worth it or if the series is going in a reasonable direction? I don't think KingK has ever developed a game, so should he take all of his videos down if he's following his own rules that if you haven't developed a game, you don't know what you're talking about? So that's one of the biggest strawman issues with KingK's video, is that KingK makes it seem like he's rushing to the defense of the artist and telling these Pokemon fans, hey, stop giving the artists a hard time. They're doing great, and this is not up to them. They're just following orders. And it's like, KingK, sugar, no one disputes that. Anyone talking about the laziness or the inadequacy of the Pokemon game's output is ultimately looking at the top, the people setting the budgets, the people scheduling the release cadence for these games. So to try to chase people away and say, it's not the artist's fault, don't give them a hard time. KingK is just rolling around in his own echo chamber, debating a strawman perspective that doesn't exist. So KingK says, if you want the artist to have more time to create, well, how does that convert to profit? So there KingK is citing the steady release cadence of these Pokemon games and saying, well, if we extend the production process to give more time to create for the artists, how does that translate to profit? Well, it doesn't. You could just as easily solve the issue by hiring more artists, more hands on deck, more help. And yes, KingK, you are technically right that that would make net revenue go down, that would make net profits go down. But this release cadence issue seems to enable a complacency in KingK's perspective that the hardware is getting more complicated, inevitably the workload increases, so we're going to keep the release cadence the same. So naturally, with each subsequent generation, they're going to be able to do less and less of total volume, given the expressiveness of the animations. And if KingK can't wrap his head around the idea that hiring more artists or giving them more time, how does that convert to profit? Well, it converts to profit because it maintains customer satisfaction. If enough people see that they're getting shortchanged, they're going to vote with their wallet. So even if a lot of people are still going to buy Sword and Shield, and they might even buy the next generation too, but there's nothing wrong with them expressing their concerns that the games are getting more hollow, that they hit store shelves with a lot less meat on the bone that is established. Well, of course, you're going to vote with your wallet. Now, I say that, but of course the problem is that for Gen 8 and even Gen 9, there's no semblance of solidarity where people are going to get together and boycott the game to send a message. They're going to buy it. Sword and Shield sold plenty, and we will touch upon the dubious nature of that unfortunate vicious cycle in part 2 of this video. It's just as simple as that, yeah, if Nintendo knows full well that people are going to buy the game regardless, and that a great many people will definitely, no question, buy both versions of the game on day one, well then it's just the Pokemon Company seeing what they can get away with, and by voicing our concerns in great numbers, we are pushing back and putting pressure on the Pokemon Company not to cut too many corners. But the fact of the matter is, the games continue to sell perfectly well. Now, KingK brings in all these layers of shame to try to chase away the criticizers from this topic by saying, can we talk about this without bringing people into it? Well, KingK is a hypocrite because he's doing that exact same thing. He's talking about the people that are ultimately very rightly upset about being shortchanged starting on the Switch with these Pokemon games. KingK doubles down saying, can we talk to each other without being above each other? But KingK, you very clearly think that you're above a great deal of your audience by saying anyone with functioning eyeballs can see the gameplay on the screen. And so as we wrap up the first of 3 sections of this video, one more thing to point out from KingK's video is the extended metaphor at the beginning about a bridge that's going to nowhere. He talks about some anime where they're building a bridge out into the distance and it's not clear what the bridge is supposed to be going to or what the purpose is for, and is it worth it to continue? What's the point? What's the end game? And he tries to extend that to Pokemon. But that is a totally broken metaphor, because with that infinitely extending bridge, a bridge is a means to an end. The bridge should connect 2 different locations, 2 bodies of land across water. So a bridge to nowhere is pointless, but that's not what Pokemon games are. Each game is its own self-contained experience. So to try to liken the continuing generations of Pokemon to that bridge that's going for... I think he just got a little bit carried away. He wanted to deliver an epic, insightful metaphor up front, and unfortunately it fell flat on its face. So what we're going to do now is take a look at KingK Incorporated as an overall entity, as itself a bridge that keeps going and extends to somewhere, if we're going by KingK's unfortunate metaphor. Because a lot of the things that KingK asks you to meditate on about the Pokemon Company itself is, very unfortunately, directly also applicable to KingK's YouTube channel. So KingK first says, is Pokemon for us, or is it for the machine? And I ask myself that same question about KingK's channel. Is it for the viewers, or is it just for the YouTube money-making machine that allows KingK to be a full-time content creator with no other job? So I am going to play one clip right now from KingK's Retrospective.
It doesn't matter how hard you scream, it doesn't matter what you say, businesses are built to go where the money goes. If you've got a good thing like this going, rule number 1 is to not fuck that up, whatever it takes. Unless, of course, you're willing to take a look at the systems which perpetuate these incentives and lines of thought.
Dude, at what point in time did KingK become the comic book guy from The Simpsons and Ian Flynn rolled into one? Did you hear the delivery of that? The over-enunciation? I feel like I'm watching a Rachel Zegler interview where she's saying that Snow White was made in the 1920s and very evidently so. KingK must know that this extra scorn is not doing him any favors, but he just wants to lash out, have his moment, take 1 week to skim through some comments, and then just have the video and the entire discussion disappear into a void outside of his own echo chamber bubble.
The devs are lazy, and that's how we ended up in this situation? Genuinely, what the Where does that line of reasoning come from? No, the reason this is happening is that Pokemon is a perpetual money-printing machine that no one in their right mind would ever slow down.
Just like KingK would not slow down to really think through this condescending criticism that he's pouring on his well-meaning viewers, and that KingK would never dream of slowing down to ensure quality control about getting basic facts like the band Kiss and Gene Simmons being from the UK, as he offhandedly states in his video. Kiss is from America. They were all born in America except Gene Simmons, who was born in Israel. And so that same complacency of guaranteed profits that King K is illuminating the audience with is also the same money machine that by this point in time is in full swing on King K's channel. King K has built his brand. He just needs to put the name of the game and the retrospective. People see that branding with that title, they're going to click on the video. Okay, so I can sit here and speculate about King K's, laziness, whether or not lazy is the right word. He certainly seems content and complacent in this bubble, and only takes a passing sniff test of the backlash that he gets that he does not appear to be interested in any meaningful self-improvement in his commentary or the fairness of his perspective. And so I can sit here and borderline speculate about this, except that King K then proceeds to open his mouth and remove all doubt about these things that I suspected.
My reasons for continuing to enjoy this formulaic structure might be perceived as shallow, but I don't really care. I don't need my opinion of a video game to be anything more than special to me. I just happen to share mine with all of you.
Okay, wow, so you just revealed your entire MO, that you're not actually out to make any valid points that other people can grasp onto. You're just kicking back in your gamer chair, honing in on whatever makes you feel the best in the moment without needing to justify it. It's almost like King K's YouTube channel is just his articulate diary of impressions, with half-baked assertions and hot takes thrown in to drive engagement and for him to lift himself up on a pedestal that he views as above the rest. So he openly acknowledges that his commentary style is overtly selfish and self-preferential, and that he's making these reviews just for himself, not really as much as a communication medium with others. Now, I recall King K used to have a self-descriptive tagline where he billed himself as a washed-up YouTuber who people refuse to stop watching. And so he's almost like basically admitting or acknowledging that his product doesn't have a lot of care and fairness. It's not necessarily making arguments in good faith. He's just distilling all of his scattered observations into a single video, which he can then upload to YouTube. Other people are allowed to see it, which will divert a great deal of revenue to him. So he's sitting there like, all right, I'm going to keep doing my thing in my echo chamber as long as you guys continue to keep watching it. King K might as well come out and say, I don't know why you would expect me, King K, to be fair or level-headed or take criticism in good faith, because I can just keep doing these videos and he's still going to get a monthly check from YouTube for ad revenue that is perfectly sufficient. But we're just about done with part 2. We're getting to the sentencing. And so King K's complacency to be happy with the lack of attention to detail and the lack of considering other people's perspectives. The guy couldn't ask around. Does Liam Triforce share all these concerns that King K has about the unreasonable backlash, supposedly, from the Pokemon community? This very aggressive condescension becomes even more baffling when you consider a little bit about King K, the person himself. And yes, King K, I'm going to talk about you, King K, the person now. Deal with it.
It's tough. I think I'm just not built for this kind of nasty behavior. Unfortunately, I have to mold myself into the kind of person who can deal with it, since my job is to contribute to that discourse in a lot of ways. To continue to write about Pokemon in any meaningful way means to address, even externally, how the franchise has developed and changed over time, using my perspective wherever it applies.
So you're going to take to your pedestal and lecture and diagnose the people who don't agree with you about a video game topic, and yet you're turning around and you have thin skin, and you can barely stand to look at comments, which you're probably just skimming through. And even when people offer valid criticism, you look at the pinned comment on the Sword and Shield retrospective video, and it's just this kind of passing whimsical, yeah, I read your comments and I guess I messed up this time, I'll try to do better next time. It all just feels very token, like you don't actually care about the feedback you're getting. You might as well just be lounging in your gamer's chair, seeking to get as much algorithm revenue as possible. It baffles my mind that these King Ks and geek critiques will so aggressively lecture dissenters in this way, but then it turns out that they're oversensitive people. And so that's going to bring us now to King K's sentencing. I will now sentence King K. I sentence you to acknowledging the fact that your channel has become the money-printing complacency factory that the Pokemon Company is, and Game Freak. You deserve me making this video because you tried to chase people away from fair, valid criticism. It is important for Pokemon fans to speak up about their misgivings, because if they don't, that's just enabling the Pokemon Company's practices. It is signaling them that all is right, keep doing what you're doing. We fans are content that each subsequent generation is a little bit more hollow, that they are taking our purchase for granted and shortchanging us because investors. So King K's sentence is straightforward enough. With that established, I guess I just want to float a thing or two to King K's viewers. What do you do next? Do you continue watching King K regardless, in the same way that you continue to buy Pokemon generations as they come out? And if you continue to watch King K and he still has a steady amount of views and ad revenue month by month, well then you got to imagine King K on his end thinking, why should I take any of this feedback and criticism to heart when I can just plow ahead knowing that I'm going to get plenty of views for it? And so you got King K, well, no, I said that. Right, me deciding whether I want to watch King K or not, I'm only one person, but many of the King K viewers that were really dismayed by this video, I'm not even telling you that you should definitely stop watching him. I know that, you know, when you're this deep into a creator, that you watching his videos throughout the years, you know that he has a lot of articulate insights that you're just not going to find on every last channel, and so you feel invested, or a scarcity mentality that you could not bring yourself to stop watching his videos. I get that, but extrapolating King K's conclusions about the Pokemon Company, if you as King K viewers will just continue watching and commenting on his videos, then the money printing machine will continue. And the only thing to conclude about that is that if that's how it's going to go, then it's probably not even worth it getting worked up in the comments. I agree with so many of the concerns that you're expressing, but if you're going to keep watching his videos and comment, just like people are still going to keep buying Pokemon games by the millions, well then nothing's going to give. There's no amount of customer backlash that will ever matter if the money will continue coming in. And at that point, it's just a matter of being honest about the fact that the Pokemon series and King K's channel started strong. And otherwise, you would not be an audience member of Pokemon or King K if they didn't start strong. But now that both King K's channel and the Pokemon Company are too big to fail, they're going to take your viewership and or game purchase for granted, cut corners, be complacent, and just ride off into the sunset with a pile of cash. And if people want to overtly phone it in, that's fine, but there should be no one chasing them away from calling out that fact. If people want to criticize Pokemon games for being half-baked, there's similarly nothing wrong with pointing out the issues with King K's content, nor does King K have any basis to give his viewers a hard time for making this all about King K the person instead of just talking about the game. But can a person bring themselves to stop watching King K? And the answer is, of course, yes, because I did. To give you a bit more perspective of who I, Alex Yard, am as a person and where I'm coming from as a King K viewer, long before I went full-time as a content creator, I was just a viewer. And King K for a while became my classic morning breakfast cereal viewing. Waking up, having breakfast, and I got my phone with King K's Sonic video essay on. And I watched enough of his videos in that context that I was like, dude, this guy makes a solid video essay. I'm enjoying them on a regular basis. I ought to step up and contribute. And so I decided it's the right thing to do, support the art that I watch. I became a patron, and it was only a $1 monthly pledge, but still, that mattered to me that I was using his content, and because I had steady income, it felt absolutely right to support him. And this worked for a while, but even after just a couple months, things changed. And basically what changed is that I started to gradually notice the things that people are now crashing up against in the comments section of this Pokemon Sword and Shield video. So those things that people are calling King K out for in the Sword and Shield video, that might be in a great many of his videos. It's a sneer, it's a condescension, it's a default negativity. And I just caught so many negative whiffs of this that at a certain point I just had a snap moment where I'm like, I'm not going to give money to this guy. When he reviews a game that's good, the angle he comes from to deliver his verdict is to say, you know, I genuinely can't think of anything bad to say about this game. It's like it's you can hear the resentment in his voice. He would love to criticize it for, right? He's going around looking for negativity. And so when something emerges as just a flat out great game, it's like he's resentful of it. It's like, all right, I'll allow you to have this status as a good game. And it's not even only the negativity, it's also a reliance on overly inflated vocabulary that is not necessary. Using this Pokemon video as an example, early on King K talks about how there's not as many options for routes of where to go, and he describes this as a lack of agency. And it's like, sure, but don't you just mean that the game is linear? Do we need to bring in these undergraduate philosophy terms in order to make basic observations about a video game? It was the great George Orwell who said, never use a big word when a smaller one will do. And I worry that some of these inflated vocabulary smoothies delivered the illusion of substantive content without even saying anything new or insightful. And look, it's not helping that some of these moments are delivered with the over-enunciation. It just feels very condescending. The Pokemon video really takes the Simpsons comic book guy condescending over-enunciation to an extreme extent, but that's always been there. And that's why I had to tap out back in the day. So King K, don't take this video personally as an ulterior grudge toward you. It's not that there's any special vendetta against you, it's just when I reached out to my audience to say, hey, have you watched any videos recently that didn't really make sense or require a thorough debunking, your name came up. So don't take it personal. It's for that same reason that when I recently did a video investigation as to whether the song Spear of Justice from Undertale was an original composition or not, Toby Fox or anyone over at Royal Sciences LLC should not take it personal as a personal vendetta against them. It's just, I work in the domain of music theory, and so when you look at the topic of which video game composers have the most extreme examples of a composition that is presented as their own, but it contains way too many composition choices from a pre-existing work, Undertale, that's the game and list of songs that came up. So I go wherever the reporting requires. And look, I name-dropped King K in my capstone cornerstone video. You have only experienced 25% of Sonic 3. And the fact that I would mention King K's name in so momentous of a video, as a starting point, you should understand that there's a gesture of respect in that. Sure, I was holding him accountable and grilling him a little bit, but if I did not respect him, I would not have immortalized him in a video like that. The fact is, I responded to King K because something he said mattered, and that counts for a lot. And look, I wish that Sonic 3 and Pokemon Sword and Shield were the only outliers of baffling, disappointing commentary and poorly reasoned arguments, doused in painful condescension and echo chamber complacency, but I can think of other videos of his where he tries to make a forceful point and the gameplay he is showing on screen at this moment completely undercuts the argument he is attempting to put forth. So to all King K viewers, I sympathize that you've been with King K for this entire journey. You're rooting for him. And I think that this situation is just a stark reminder that the money printing machine that keeps King K and the Pokemon series active all traces back to every individual purchase adding up to guaranteed revenue. So it can be frustrating that these entities are too big to fail, but you should never, ever let the emotional soapboxing of people like King K try to chase you away from honest, constructive criticism. And so anyone who tries to chase away people in this way, well, they deserve 3 times as much pushback. Put them on notice. Don't negotiate with terrorists. Don't let King K try to hold you emotional hostage by trying to guilt you into, oh, leave the devs alone. Leave the artists alone. That's a total straw man, and just about everyone in KingK's comments section recognizes this, but does it matter? Is the bridge too far along that KingK is set to coast off into the horizon, cash in tow, getting the last laugh every time he hits a new subscriber milestone? So if it's any consolation to y'all disgruntled KingK viewers, please feel free to let me know if there's any other videos, either recently or from the past, that deserve a reassessment. I did see someone on the Sword and Shield video saying, KingK's retrospective here deserves its own retrospective a few years from now. Ask and you shall receive. You get the Insta retrospective today, just over a week after his Pokemon video debuted. And so this has been Alex Yard here at 91.6 WAYZ, the Alex Yard Zone. Let's go ahead and add KingK to the Atonement Pending Board. So take care, everybody. Don't let KingK get you riled up, because at this point he's just screwing around half the time, and you deserve better. Goodbye.